This week on Arizona Illustrated, a day in the life of Baxter Black, analyzing the impact of concussions, nursing the wild back to life. Hello and welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom Mcnamara. He rode bulls in high school and college and went on to become a large animal veterinarian for ranchers and cowboys across the West. He also became their storyteller. And for 2 decades, he was a regular on NPR's Morning Edition. He still hosts his own Monday radio show and a TV show called Out There with Baxter Black. We went out there to visit with Baxter Black on his ranch in Benson, Arizona.
I am writing for the cowboy. Many good ranchers and rich oil men, I love them all. I do. And if they like being around cowboys, that's fine. But when I write the story, I'm aiming at the guy that's working for them, because that's me. Rudy? Lo siento, y usted no puede ir.
It started with milking the cow and feeding the chickens on his parents' place.
When we went out to feed the chickens, we had this mean old rooster.
Seems all things agricultural were in his blood from the start. His first foray into poetry came years later in a college class.
And I wrote this poem, and it was I know it had a religious point to it, but it came back from the English teacher, and at the top, and then they had those old red wax pencils. Had a big red wax circle with an F in it. And the teacher had written, "Write about what you know."
Well, he knew hard work and he knew cowboys. And over time, he went on to write about what he knew.
Cowboy poetry is about wrecks. Horse wrecks, dog wrecks, cow wrecks, shipwrecks, financial wrecks. And that's, I guess, my place in life too.
His most recent effort is called Lessons from a Desperado Poet.
I dedicated this poem to a friend of mine who fell while sitting on a mule's neck backwards and broke his back. So I wrote this for him, but it applies to a lot of people who lose their mind sometimes. It's called Living on the Edge. There, but for a whim of fate, go you and I. Any man who chases lightning or thinks that he can fly. Are we stupid? Are we crazy? Are we rebels without cause? No, the reason is much simpler. We bet the pot because the drummer who keeps time for us stays just beyond the ledge, and one only hears his cadence when one's living on the edge. You'll never know just how much I love you. You'll never know just how much I care. I've got blood thinner. I've had a heart stent done, and so when you get in that brush, sometimes you come out and look like you've been in a sword fight.
Baxter Black, the prolific poet and humorist to folks of the country and Western persuasion. Farmers, ranchers, cowboys, and those who wish they were one. As to being a cowboy, Baxter says it's not something you decide. You either are one or you aren't.
But listen, we got thunder. It means we're going to have lightning and it's going to rain. And I'm going to get to watch it.
When he's not writing poetry and reading to his listeners, he rides alongside his longtime friend and ranch hand, Francisco. And if you ride long enough, you're bound to get bucked off.
I did get bucked off. And it was a horse that I had been riding for a year. And the first 2 leaps, I was in the leaves, in the branches. And then we came out of there, but I had one rein in my hand. And I just let flat on my back. But I still had a hold of the rein. I was proud of that. Francisco said, "It looked like a rodeo." You know, you got to be able to take a fall. Financially, you get your heart broken, you got to get up and keep going. If you lose your job, you got to get up and get back on a horse. Stupid as it may sound. Listo, Francisco. Sígame.
Baxter Black, now 70, says his poetry is born out of life experience, his own and those he's come to know.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear that thunder? Voila!
He grew up and lived most of his life in places where it doesn't rain. He's called Arizona home since 1997.
So I live in a grand part of the world, and one of the things that lured me here, if I could call it that, was I made the mistake of driving through this for the first time in August, and it was verdant and green. And I thought, my gosh, it's like the jungle here. I think I could do this.
Sure enough, he's written a poem about rain.
It's called Feast or Famine. In Feast or Famine, at least examine the game we came to play. Because win or lose, it's how you use the cards that come your way. Just let her rain, the rancher said. I've built up quite a thirst. I know the low road's plumb washed out, the tank dam's bound to burst. We'll have to plant the wheat again and clean the water gaps. But you won't hear this fool complain if it reaches to my shafts. The truth is, friends, we've needed this. We've been so dry so long, I thought we'd have to sell the cows and pay the piper's song. The winter grass just lay there stiff for months, it never changed. I'd walk out through the crackling brown that covered all my range and watch the wind blow dust clouds where good grass should have been. I'd count the bales in the stack and calculate again the days of feeding I had left before I'd have to face the ultimate decision, what I'd do to save the place. The weatherman was helpful, except he always told the truth. Fiddling chance of 10% meant it just rained in Duluth. And that's, keep her coming, baby. That's nice for Minnesota, but it don't help me a bit. I gave up chewing Red Man so I wouldn't have to spit. But he said last night, a chance of rain, more than just a trace. I washed the car and left the windows open just in case. And sure enough, this morning, big old clouds come rolling in. And they parked above the driveway, and the thunder made a din that rattled all the windows in the house where I sat still. And at 2, it started raining. And I still ain't got my fill. It's coming down in buckets, like it's paying back a debt, and me, I'm standing in the front yard in my shorts and soaking wet. When the sun comes out tomorrow and sparkles all around off pools and puddles standing like big diamonds in the ground, I remember feast and famine, but when it comes to rain, you take the feast when offered, if you live out on the plain.
Researchers recently reported that 87 out of 91 former NFL players who donated their brains to science tested positive for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a brain disease that can cause depression and dementia. CTE is at the center of the debate over concussions in football, but there's still a lot scientists don't know about it or about concussions themselves. A study involving the Arizona State University Sun Devil football team is hoping to change that to better understand concussions in football and beyond.
Can you pee for me? Yeah. Don't fill it up.
It's the day after a football game at Arizona State University.
You awake?
And tired student athletes stumble in to see medical assistant Yana Gadayev.
All right, what do you want to do first? Pee?
They hand her saliva and urine samples before grabbing a snack
Thank you, sir.
and getting on with the day.
Appreciate it.
It's become a routine, but every sample offers a clue to what happens in the brain when players collide.
It's the impact of a car accident that these professional and collegiate football players are encountering. So on a daily basis, they're going through car accident after car accident after car accident with these games. And those are the impacts that can cause concussion. Well, a concussion, by definition, is alteration of function of the brain when there is an injury to the head.
As a neurologist and a member of the National Football League's Head, Neck, and Spine Committee, Javier Cardenas spends a lot of time thinking about what we know and don't know about concussions. Researchers know that one concussion puts you at greater risk for a second until you recover, and that 98% of those who suffer a concussion do recover. It's what researchers don't know that has put concussions at the center of a controversy.
The controversy is around what's called CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And this is not something that's new to the field of brain injury. This is known and has been well known in boxers. It used to be called concussion hemorrhages. It used to be called punch drunk. Harrison Martland in 1936 initially described these things. And he actually described a clinical presentation in which these boxers, these former boxers, would go through these emotional and mood changes. Fast forward now to seeing football players and more microscopic changes, specifically tau protein, in the brain of these football players who had suffered multiple injuries and were having these similar changes in their mood and behavior.
CTE has been found in people with a history of repetitive brain trauma, and that has raised concerns about the long-term risks of concussion.
Okay, look straight ahead.
To understand and prevent CTE, Cardenas says we need to understand concussions too, and get better at diagnosing them.
Right now, there's a lot of subjectivity in the diagnosis of concussion, whether or not they have symptoms, whether or not when you're doing an exam you can detect an error in balance or an error in thinking. That's very subjective. So identifying a marker which tells us they've been concussed or not, that's most important. Finger, hands at your side.
That's where the ASU football team comes in. Cardenas and colleagues at the Translational Genomics Research Institute, including geneticist Matt Huntelman,
this run's going to be okay to use.
Yep. I think number 5 looks pretty good too, actually.
teamed up with the Sun Devils to search for markers or biological signs of damage to the brain.
The theory here, the concept, is that when your brain experiences an injury and repeated impacts might be considered an injury, that we would see a change in this chemical in our body that's already there, but we'd see a change. And the chemical that we follow for this study is RNA. It's a sister chemical to DNA, and we use the RNA as our indicator of changes that might be happening in the brain.
Student athletes who volunteer for the study wear special helmets that record every impact they experience by sending signals to a computer on the sidelines.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Blessed, how about you?
Fantastic, here we go.
Before and after games, and whenever they suffer a concussion, they provide blood, urine, and saliva samples. The idea is to search their samples for clues to how collisions on the field alter the brain.
It's really about how the brain reacts to multiple head impacts. And of course, football is a sport that's great to study for that. We care about concussions, of course, but we also care about those athletes that never experience a concussion but get hit a lot. So they have a lot of head impacts. And does that mean that their brain is doing okay? Or is there some injury there that we don't know about? And can we use our biomarkers as an indicator of that? Let's say that the impacts you experienced during the game set you up for a concussion during the practice week. We'd like to know that so we can help those players avoid that concussion, right? So if whatever they experienced during the game took them to the very edge, but they didn't tip over into getting a concussion, we want to know that so that on Tuesday, they don't go out and go full-on, full-contact practice.
For Sun Devils head coach Todd Graham, the team's participation in the study is a chance to help its players and a sign that football is changing.
I was a defensive back, and I had a lot of episodes where I experienced, head trauma, and they'd give you smelling salt, and you went in. We kept going. I never missed a play. You never missed a practice because you had a head trauma. No one knew anything about it.
Graham says the team now emphasizes safety and awareness more strongly and takes head injuries much more seriously. Techniques have changed too, so that student athletes learn to move and tackle in ways that help them avoid injury.
What we're doing right now is probably pretty primitive to where we can be, and that's why we need to be proactive in this research, in this study, to help protect our players and protect our game.
The culture change is significant, but it's also very new. New enough that even the team's young players remember a different approach.
And I still remember, it's like September of 2011, and I was a sophomore, junior in high school. And it happened, obviously playing football. When I hit the guy, I literally seen stars, stars just blinking. And, unfortunately, my team needed me, so I kept playing, but I definitely had a concussion.
Before, if you had a headache, it was like, oh, that's probably nothing. It just comes with football.
Cardenas and his colleagues are now in their third year of the concussion study. They hope their results will change the game of concussion diagnosis and treatment, and change the stakes for those who face the greatest risks.
Until recently, the number one cause of a traumatic brain injury was a car accident. Crumple zones, airbags, seatbelt usage, stability control are all things that have contributed to the safety of cars so that motor vehicle crashes are no longer the number one cause of brain injury. The number one cause of brain injury right now is a fall. The same can be said for sports activity. So you think about all the things that can change with a sports activity, including changing the way people tackle, changing the rules of the game, improving the helmets, improving techniques so that you reduce the risk of injury.
No one wants football to go away. We're all football fans. But we want to make the game safer for the players. We want to extend their careers and keep them on the field. We can still have the game we love, but have it be safe for the players to participate in for decades of their life. We have to find that right balance.
That's a balance that more and more young players are eager to strike.
And we're blessed enough to have these talents that God's given us to play football, but at the same time, reality is it's just a game. It would be a tragedy. It would be a tragedy if you were to, get hit so many times or deliver blows so many times that, you can't even think straight, 20 years down the road.
The Sonoran Desert is full of amazing animals that have evolved over centuries to survive and thrive here. But what happens to a wild animal that's injured, orphaned, or displaced? Our next story is about a place near Tucson where hundreds of creatures get a second chance thanks to caring hands and compassionate hearts.
This ranch-style house in Tucson is representative of many others in the city. It's a familiar sample of 20th century residential models, but if you venture inside, it is anything but commonplace. The property is home to a wildlife rehabilitation center, mostly birds or small mammals that have been injured or abandoned. creatures that depend on helpful human hands for survival and recovery. For example, these two barn owls came in as orphans. Volunteer Alan Taskey is assisting with their care.
They were brought in and parentless, and we started hand feeding them. They're perfectly healthy. They were too young to be left alone. They weren't able to survive on their own. And now they are mature enough, and they will be released within a 2-week period.
A few yards away, another enclosure is home to a family of great horned owls. Luna lost one of her eyes when she was young and can't be released into the wild. She is used for education and outreach, and as a foster mom to new generations that will return to the natural world.
Mostly I'm in here with the songbirds and also with the bunnies, and I really enjoy it. Sometimes I'm really tired when I get home.
When you work here, you do just about everything. We do everything from laundry to dishes to skinning and chopping mice, food preparation, cleaning cages. It's never ending and it's never done.
Are you doing bunnies? Who's doing bunnies?
And it would not be possible without the direction, guidance, and determination of Janet Miller. Janet Miller and her husband Louis founded the center more than 20 years ago, but he passed away in 2010.
He was able to see the funny side of things and go with that. And he cared about what we were doing. He was very interested, and he was a fine partner. So it was a real loss as far as I was concerned.
Still, she continues the operation thanks to a team of caring volunteers and veterinarians. That and her own endless efforts. Her workdays are longer than those of millions of other people who are decades younger.
My day is running about 18 hours.
That's right, about 18 hours a day. This is not an office job or a store with a fixed schedule. The clients here are living, breathing animals that require round-the-clock care.
Especially summer and spring. This is big baby season. Everybody wants to eat all the time. And they want to eat now, not later.
Janet Miller organizes schedules. She trains volunteers, orders food, and mixes formulas.
We all need heroes. I don't care how old we are. She is a hero to me. She really is. She's an amazing woman. Her knowledge, her patience, her temperament, her love for animals. She will be right up there with St. Francis.
Somebody described you as a hero.
A hero. Well, I don't know myself as a hero. I'm doing something, as I told you, that I wanted to do. I can't do it all now, but I've got people who can, and they do a good job.
See you next week. See you next week. Thanks.
And when her team takes off for the night, Miller is at it again when necessary. The animals in her home depend on her, and Janet Miller delivers. It is a sentiment she has carried all her life, a love for animals and nature, a desire to alleviate and nurture.
I think attitude towards this plays a tremendous role. In other words, I have to believe in what we're doing, and I have to care about what we're doing enough to say, hey, I've got to get up in the morning, and I'm going to get up because I know I have something that needs to be done. There's 4 kestrels, 2 here and 2 down below.
Miller informs her potential volunteers about this because there are setbacks and heartbreak, and the job is not for everyone. Some animals won't heal and cannot be released or be placed in a proper facility such as a zoo. They cannot be kept as pets, so sometimes they must be euthanized. However, success stories keep them going. A red-tailed hawk is getting a chance to test his wings.
Flying around the aviary is great, but that's not going to tell me the whole story.
It is called creons, flying him with a line attached to a leg so it can't get away.
Steph, are you ready? All right, we're going to put him on the ground. We're going to see what he does. That's what he does. Whoa!
This raptor is looking good and should be ready for the wild in a few days.
Yeah, thumbs up. It pleases me greatly to see something return to the wild. This is what it's all about, getting these guys into the wild again. They look good to me.
This is the most personally satisfying thing I've ever done. These animals are beautiful. I learned so much about myself. I get to care for animals who are frightened. They don't speak my language. I don't speak their language. And if they can become healthy and get back into the natural sort of things out there, what better thing is there? It's great.
Animals are my passion, especially the wildlife. They're the true innocents in the world. So yeah, it's very emotional.
She wants a worm, just a minute. That gives me great pleasure to see that happen. And I have to accept the fact that it can't happen. You can't do 400 and 500 animals a year and expect everything's going to go okay, because it's not.
But Janet Miller keeps on trying.
She's absolutely amazing, and without her, this place would not exist. That's a fact.
She's getting anxious.
She's not sure how much longer she'll be able to keep it going, but as long as she has her health and can count on her extended family, she'll go back to her house, get up early in the morning, and work late into the night. 18 hours if necessary, she explains. The animals are counting on her.
You can find a list of all licensed wildlife rehabilitators in Arizona, including Janet Miller's, at the Arizona Game and Fish Department website, azgfdportal.az.gov. Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, we celebrate Architecture Week. A modernist with a sensitivity to the desert environment. San Javier del Bach's East Tower. Secrets revealed during the restoration of U of A's Old Main, and one man's community treasure is another's eyesore from the vault. I'm Tom Mcnamara. See you next week.